The St. Louis Cardinals have a big decision to make on Sunday night as they pick 5th overall in the MLB Draft. Who should the Cardinals take? We'll talk about it coming up on b-schaeff Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of b-schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you. Sunday, before the Cardinals series finale against the Braves. Final game before the All-Star break. But we're really not going to talk about the current Cardinals roster or season much at all in this episode because I had said earlier in the week that I would, jump on and preview a little bit of MLB Draft content as the draft begins Sunday night. The Cardinals drafting with the number 5 pick in the first round. So if you listen to this anytime after Sunday afternoon, it's probably old news, but you can see how my predictions went, I suppose. I won't really offer full-fledged predictions, but I want to talk about the state of that first round, the state of that top 5, what people are saying, and maybe how we expect it to play out for the Cardinals. There's obviously a number of directions they could go here, but some of that's going to depend on what happens ahead of them. So, Cardinals picking at number 5. There are some good arms, some good college pitchers expected to go near the top of the draft. There are some high school shortstops. There's a college shortstop getting some attention as well. What direction do the Cardinals want to go? You have to believe that they won't necessarily be picking this high again anytime soon. That's the hope anyway. Now, granted, they got lucky and were selected in the lottery despite having an 83-win season last year. So I guess technically you could have some good fortune even if you aren't having a terrible season. But most of the time, Cardinals want to be in the playoffs. They want to make the postseason. So hopefully, barring just down the road some really good luck like they had this time around, the Cardinals won't often be able to access the talent at the very tip-top of the draft. They've got a chance to do it on Sunday. So let's talk about the way the top 5 picks could unfold and what we're looking for from the Cardinals to do. The order of the top 5 goes Nationals, Angels, Mariners, Rockies, Cardinals. And there's a couple of names that are expected to definitely not be available by the time the Cardinals pick. Left-handed pitcher Cade Anderson out of Louisiana State, LSU, will not be there for the Cardinals. More than likely, he goes number 1, if not probably number 2. Ethan Holliday's the other name that will not be available to the Cardinals. Just won't be. There's a belief that there's just no way he would get past the Rockies at 4. Obviously, Matt Holliday, his dad, played with the Rockies. There's just no chance that Holliday slides past the Rockies. So if the number 1 pick goes the way of the pitcher Cade Anderson out of LSU for the Nationals, that LSU pipeline, of course, Paul Skeens, notable from recent years, probably locks in Holliday at number 4 at the latest. I don't know 100%. I'm not somebody that follows super closely the minutia of draft prospects, but everybody seems to be in agreement that the Angels and Mariners are going to take a couple of those pitchers. There's a college pitcher, Liam Doyle, out of Tennessee, and he had some really good showings, if I recall this correctly, throughout the College World Series process. That's expected to go, I'm looking at the MLB Pipeline prediction, to the Angels at number 2. Okay. The Mariners are listed to take Seth Anderson, according to MLB Pipeline. And look, we know with mock drafts, anything can happen. It doesn't always happen the way that people expect it to. But that's pretty consensus. Seth Anderson is a high school pitcher out of California. Would not really expect the Cardinals to go high school pitcher. That would surprise me. Even if Seth Anderson somehow failed to be available to them, I would be surprised by that. But if that unfolds the way that at least MLB Pipeline projects it will, that leaves the Cardinals some access to a few options. A lot of those shortstops would still be on the board. Billy Carlson is a name. Eli Willlets is a name. And if you've been following the draft content in recent days, a lot of folks have connected Eli Willis to the Cardinals. And it makes sense, man. When you look at his profile, he just feels very much like a player the Cardinals would traditionally go for. And he's super young, too, which means you have to wait a little while to get to enjoy him. But also, that's kind of exciting. Like, kid's just 17. He doesn't turn 18 until December. and across the board seems to be a really, really good, well-balanced, well-rounded player. I guess the downside to him, if you're a Cardinals fan, talking about Eli Willis, who is committed to Oklahoma, we won't hold that against him. Try not to anyway. But is never going to end up in Norman because he's going to get picked in the top 5, top 10, maybe number 1 overall. Some rumblings that Eli Willis potentially interested or willing to take a lower than slot deal in order to be considered higher up. I'm reading this from MLB Pipeline. Sources from multiple teams reported that Willis was shopping a discount deal to go at or near the top of the draft. Players who consent to a pre-draft physical exam at the combine are guaranteed at least 75% of the assigned slot value for the pick, but Willis passed up the chance to do so by skipping the event. So why that would be, I don't know, unless he's trying to pick his landing spot. Like I said, there are people who are much more well-versed in this stuff than me. I do find it all very interesting. But the Cardinals, the idea of picking at number 5 and potentially taking a player who would be willing to accept less than slot value, which I don't know if that's applicable to Willis. Like, if Willis is looking to go at or near the top of the draft, well, at the top of the draft would be Nationals at number 1. But if it's a case where, he'd go to the Cardinals at 5 and is willing to maybe not, blow the Cardinals' entire budget, could they then draft some interesting pieces later on? I guess that's the theory. I just don't understand necessarily why a player would want less money, Like I said, there are people who may understand why Willis would be more willing to accept a lesser deal. His agent is not Scott Boras, which I believe Holiday and Kate Anderson are both represented by Boras. And so, just the idea of not having to deal with Boras maybe would be compelling to some teams at the top there. But Willis potentially could go number 1 overall. Like there have been some rumblings that could be the case. And if that happens, I would say that would be probably a bad outcome for the Cardinals personally, just because as I think through the thread on this, okay, let's say he goes 1. Okay, Kate Anderson then is going to go 2 or 3. Liam Doyle probably the other one to go. And then the Cardinals still don't have any access to those college pitchers that are at the very tippy top of the draft because the guy that slides is probably the high school one, Seth Hernandez. Cade Anderson, Seth Hernandez. So if Willis goes 1, Holiday still goes 4. The 2 college guys probably go 2 and 3 in some order. If the Angels at 2 decide, we were going to take Liam Doyle, but Cade Anderson's there, we'll take him. And then the Mariners go, we were going to go the high school kid, but Liam Doyle, the college kid, is going to be there, so we'll take him. Holiday goes 4. The Cardinals would then, I just don't see them taking a high school pitcher, which means they're basically looking at the same pool of candidates, except Eli Willis is not on the table for them at that point. I don't know how to pronounce Ava Arquette. Ava Arquette, however you pronounce that young man's name, out of Oregon State. He's a shortstop, so college shortstop. And the high school shortstops being Billy Carlson, and you also have JoJo Parker. That is a name out of Mississippi that's a high school shortstop mocked into the top 10. Maybe a guy with a little bit more power upside from what I read. And that would be the thing about Willis. I think he would be a really good, like people would ask your opinion, like, what do you think? Eli Willis, is he a good one for the Cardinals? Would you be okay with that? I personally would. I've seen some people kind of underwhelmed by the idea that, okay, it's another guy who, is going to probably progress through. He's a very balanced player, good future big leaguer. You can project all of those things, but probably not ever going to develop into a real power hitter, which is like where a lot of the intrigue, I think, would come when you're taking a position player near the top of the draft. Like, the Cardinals have drafted those types of guys who are good players, but I think we kind of talk about the Cardinals in sort of derogatory terms these days, whether it's fair or not, that they don't have that superstar, right? That guy that just develops into, like Mason Wynn is a really, really good player, and he's going to be a big leaguer for a long time. Is he ever going to hit 30 home runs? Probably not. Is he ever going to be, a 900 OPS, which is derived from having good on-base skills, but also being able to hit for power? Maybe he never ascends to that level of a hitter. And so with a guy like JoJo Parker, I think the hit tool is a 60 on the scouting grade scale, and that was the same was true for Eli Willis, a 60 hit tool. The power tool for Parker is graded as a 55 on that 80-point scale, and it's only a 45 for Willetts. So if you're talking about upside offensively for that profile, maybe Willetts is considered better, a little better runner, a little better athlete, maybe a little bit of a better fielder. But it may be that Parker is the one with more upside to develop into more of a power bat. And if you're the Cardinals and you're lacking that superstar, again, you don't want to choose who you draft based on the current needs of your big league roster. You have to think years down the road. These are high school kids that we're talking about. And by the way, don't worry about the fact that they're all shortstops. If you're drafting a high school player and he's not a pitcher, he damn well better be a shortstop. That's what I've continued to say, because that's the best athlete on the field at that age. So that doesn't mean that any of these guys will be future shortstops. And look, by the time they get to the big leagues, especially a 17-year-old kid, Mason Wynn could be on another team. If the Cardinals don't re-sign him to a long-term extension, which hopefully they do. But I'm just saying, don't worry that I'm talking a lot about these shortstops as being very probable options for the Cardinals. It doesn't matter that they have a shortstop. I can't impress that enough upon the audience that just does not matter. The shortstop is just, at that age, the best player on the field, and so they can move to the outfield, they can move elsewhere depending on their profile. That's okay. It's not an impediment that the Cardinals have a shortstop. But I guess I would just look at it and say, as a Cardinals fan, do you want to see the team go for the player that maybe he has more of a power profile, more of an upside to turn into that superstar, but there's maybe a higher percentage chance that he's a bust, rather than a guy like Willetts, who his father, Reggie Willetts, played in the majors. Just seems like that kind of guy that very unlikely to miss and never make the big leagues, right? He seems like the type of player, profile-wise, that he's going to be a big leaguer, but is he ever going to be like the best player on the St. Louis Cardinals or on any major league team? Maybe not, because that power profile may just be a notch below what some of the other guys may have. But also, the Cardinals like well-rounded players. They like guys who can handle the glove. They like guys who can run. They like guys who can do, have good contact skills and can do a little bit of everything. It's just, if you're looking to say, hey, this is maybe the one chance we're going to have to access the very tippy top of the amateur talent pool, do you go big or go home? And is Willetts seen as that type of player where, the upside is considered to match what you might be looking for if you're the Cardinals? I think he would be a great player to get into the organization. It would be exciting to see him grow in the years ahead. Another name that I haven't mentioned, we're talking about these college pitchers, Cade Anderson, Liam Doyle. There's another one, Jamie Arnold, a left-hander. And all three of these guys, by the way, are left-handers, these college pitchers. Jamie Arnold is a guy that, by all accounts, is going to be available to the Cardinals at 5 if they want to go that route. Reading from his profile on MLB Pipeline, 60 grade fastball, 65 grade slider, which I think is maybe a sweeper, not 100%. 50 grade changeup, 55 grade control, overall rated a 60 on that 80-point scale as a prospect. He's a 21-year-old left-hander, 6'1", 188. And like I said, expected to probably be available there at 5. The scouting report from Pipeline lists him as a left-hander with a rangy body and a loose, whippy arm. Arnold has seen his stuff tick up since leaving Jesuit High School for Tallahassee. He's a Florida State kid, coming from a lower arm slot and a flat approach angle. His fastball, which was 88 to 92 miles per hour in high school, now sits mid-90s and touches 97 with a ton of life to miss bats, which is what you need if you're taking a pitcher. You got to start missing some bats, right? And a lot of times the Cardinals aren't accessing this high end of the talent pool. They drafted McGrevy a handful of years ago in the first round, and he's a big league prospect and is going to be a big league arm. Going to be in the rotation next year for sure, right? If not next week. But he's not a guy that misses a ton of bats and really never profiled that he would. So when they drafted him, it was kind of like low upside, but high floor. He's a mid-rotation guy. That's how I still view Michael McGrevy. I think he's going to be a middle-of-the-rotation guy for a long time. But when you talk about the upside, to have a true ace of staff, I don't know if McGrevy ever fills that role in a traditional sense with a huge K rate and things like that. Jamie Arnold, could he be that guy? While his slider can be a little wide at times, the 82 to 85 mile per hour sweeping breaking ball is a second plus offering that elicited a 41% miss rate in the 2024 season. He has a changeup, doesn't need it much, but has some feel for it. He's shown the ability to fill up the strike zone, limit damage while maintaining his stuff deep into outings, so that's something that you value if you're looking for an ace. Funky arm slot. His stuff has drawn some comparisons to Chris Sale, reason why his name will be mentioned in the conversations at the top of the first round. Kind of reminds you of Cooper Jerpy in that way, right? We talk about Cooper Jerpy, and of course, you start getting these guys with stuff, and the funky arm angle, you always worry about injury, but Jerpy's having his Tommy John, and he'll hopefully be back and ready to start growing back into his future self next year. 24-year-old Cooper Jerpy. He'll be 25 in March, by the way. So hopefully he's able to recover from that injury and start progressing toward the big leagues. Another guy that was a first-round pick of the Cardinals, but 3 years later, you haven't seen him. That's what's crazy. When you look at the 2024 draft, something I want to mention that I do believe is sort of relevant here, you can go a number of different ways. And look, there may be these high school players 5 years down the road, anybody that passed him up for like almost the short-term benefits of taking a college player who is going to graduate to the big leagues sooner in theory, because guys who have played in college are a lot closer. Like, look at J.J. Weatherholt. They just drafted him last year, and already he's to AAA, and people are clamoring for him to get the call. So with that in consideration, you're like, man, why wouldn't you want to draft these college-ready guys or these college-age guys who are more ready to potentially make an impact sooner than later? Because the longer away from the big leagues a guy is, really the more percentage chance he could have to bust, and you never see him. Travis Bazzana was like he's got to be the number one pick last year out of Oregon State. I'm not saying he's not necessarily somebody that's going to still have a good career, but he hasn't been called up by the Guardians yet, and he's only at AA, and he's kind of doing fine at AA. 795 OPS, nothing overwhelming at this point. And he's 22 years old playing at AA. It's like, that's fine. But when you compare it to the rest of the top 10, Chase Burns, he's already making a big impact for the Reds, was number 2 pitcher last year. Nick Kurtz out of Wake Forest, the slugging first baseman, he's got like 16 homers for the A's, and they didn't call him up until about a month into the year. Jack Caglione up with the Royals. He's still, kind of finding his footing, but he's been called up already. J.J. Weatherholt, obviously, we feel like he's close. Christian Moore, Angels have called him up. I'm not saying all these guys are going to be studs, but it's like, man, a lot of these guys, Cam Smith, drafted by the Cubs, he's already been up with the Astros. So at the top half of this first round, number of guys who are already making an impact, and some of them, like Nick Kurtz and Chase Burns, are like getting stuff done. Charlie Condon of Georgia had an injury, and so he's a little further behind. It's like you can draft these college kids, Condon and Bazzana, and it's like, well, they haven't even made an impact yet. Not saying you have to a year out, but it's becoming more and more common where it's like if you're drafting this high caliber of talent, like Skeens, he was drafted, and look, I know he's a generational pitching prospect, but it wasn't long before he was making an impact. And so, like, you could go that route where it feels like some of these collegiate players, the pitchers, Anderson, Jamie Arnold, Liam Doyle, like, could you see one of those guys within the next year and a half or so, 2 years, making an impact for the Cardinals if they go that route? Yeah, maybe. You wouldn't get that with Eli Willis. Maybe Arquette is closer, but maybe Arquette, the shortstop out of Oregon State, maybe he's more like a Bazzana where, I don't know, he ends up at AA and he just doesn't, it doesn't mean he's a bust, but when you draft somebody at that part of the draft, it's hard to be patient. You need to be patient, but when you look around and see the type of guys that come right up a year later and they're making a big league impact already, why waste the prime years of a guy? If you can access one of those prospects that you think can make an impact sooner than later, there can be value to that. Ike Irish is a name that maybe the Cardinals see him that way. He's a catcher/outfielder, Auburn kid with a 55 power grade, a 60 hit tool. Not as good of a runner or fielder, but maybe has that power upside. It might be one of those guys that's projected to go a little bit lower, and so if the Cardinals do sign him at 5, they might be able to get him below slot and therefore access some additional cash for later on in their draft. That's a possibility that has been floating around. So, like, there's a number of ways they could go. As much as I say, access the elite talent pool, if you take a high school shortstop that's further away from making it, there's risk associated with that. I'm not really a big fan, just looking at the profile, I don't know a lot about him, but Billy Carlson, high school shortstop, he'll turn 19 in July. Hit tool is a little lower as a 50. Power is a 50, so a little bit higher than Willetts. But he's got, like, great arm, great fielding, a 70 fielder. But like the Cardinals don't really need to say, let's get the Gold Glove caliber shortstop who might be more of a league average hitter, because that's Mason Wynn. They already have that guy. I know you don't draft for need, but I think if the Cardinals need anything, man, they need that. They need to access that high-end offensive upside if they're taking a hitter, in my opinion. And Willis is just so well-rounded, and the hit tool is so appreciated that even if he's not a huge power bat, hit tool, on-base tool, does a little bit of everything and could probably play anywhere. That's attractive for sure. Willis is also a switch hitter, which is always nice. So I don't know. What do you think, Cardinals fans? I would think if they go the pitching route, Jamie Arnold is probably the guy, unless somebody else falls due to Willis going early and something unexpectedly happening. It would be nice to think about the Cardinals getting a future frontline starter to be able to add to some of the guys already in the system. And I think right now you've got the pitching development guys in the org to be able to take advantage of developing appropriately one of these prospects if they do go pitching route. And then you're thinking about, oh boy, Quinn Matthews is on the way. Takoa Roby, can he make it? Some other guys in the org. Eshawn Henderson on the way. 2-3 years down the road, you could have a really interesting dynamic rotation, and maybe, you add to that core of pitching prospects with a guy in this draft at number 5. I think, though, the Cardinals, with guys like Rob Cerfolio and Matt Pierpont and the guys that they have on the pitching development side, I'm more intrigued to see them get as high of an upside bat as they could at 5 and then identify some pitchers a little bit later in the draft. Draft pitchers, second round, third round. Quinn Matthews was a 4th round pick, right? So they can absolutely make an impact later on. That's where I would like to see them stockpile arms. But man, to think about getting a dude at the very top of the draft who could turn into their centerpiece on offense in 3 to 5 years, that would be the compelling angle to me. If Willetts doesn't have enough upside for that, then you maybe go for one of the other guys. But tell me, Cardinals fans, what do you think the Cardinals should do stylistically, approach-wise, with this draft pick? Because again, at number 5, they haven't been here since 1998 when they took J.D. Drew. So huge opportunity before the Cardinals on Sunday afternoon. Draft starts, I believe, 5 Central. Maybe I'll be going live on YouTube, either on my own channel, maybe STL Sports Central will ask me to do a show. They have not yet, but if they do, you'll see me, and I'll tweet it out at b-schaefer12 on Twitter, talking about the draft. We will recap maybe a little bit from Sunday's Cardinals game, but more so, the draft stuff might be what's most interesting tonight. Cardinals, I believe, have 4 picks in the first 3 rounds, so could be a lot to get to. And then tomorrow morning, I'm taking off early, driving down to Atlanta. Check out my Twitter, my TikTok, everything at b-schaefer12 for some maybe some home run derby content. Hopefully I'm able to get there and have no problem getting in and credentialed and everything. And then the All-Star game on Tuesday, my first All-Star week experience. So we'll have a lot of fun with that. And then I'll be doing some SEC Media Day stuff on Wednesday and Thursday, also happening in Atlanta. So let me know what you guys think. If I had to nail it down, if Willetts does not go number 1 to the Nationals, I think that'll be the Cardinals' pick tonight. If not, maybe it's Jamie Arnold. A fun case scenario could potentially be, and some people have Arnold rated above Liam Doyle anyway, but if some chaos happens at the top where Willetts goes 1 and then, that causes Cade Anderson to go 2 and maybe Doyle falls the Tennessee guy, man, John Denton would love that. And Doyle, by the way, just has a really good fastball. He can hit 100. A 75 grade on the fastball is an 80 grade on the 80 grade scale. He's got a little funk to his delivery as well. Feels like a guy who's, again, when you see guy throwing 100, you're like, uh-oh, what's going to happen to the elbow? But there's a lot of intrigue, I think, with that left-handed arm. Anybody that's left-handed throws 100 is good enough for me. So could that be a direction the Cardinals go? He's expected to be maybe already drafted before the Cardinals pick at 5. But like I said, if Willetts goes 1, does that slide somebody down unexpectedly? And the Cardinals could take advantage there. For me, one of these college pitchers or the highest upside bat is the way that I would go if I were the Cardinals. We'll see what they end up doing tonight, and we'll talk about it on B-Schaeff Daily. Follow us on Spotify or subscribe to this channel on YouTube for more Cardinals content all year long. That's going to do it, though, for this edition of the show. Throw your comments below and let me know what you guys think. Appreciate you for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.